Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Young Black Social Worker, where I talk about all things related to social work. So today's video is going to be a bit of an extension of previous videos that I've done where I've spoken about your interview process. Now, I've had a lot of success on my interview videos. If you haven't already, please do make sure you check them out. I've quickly realized that a lot of everybody requires support around their interviews, around skills, around what to do, what to say, what to do next. What I would say about interviews is that even the best of us, even the most experienced practitioners, can still struggle with an interview. And yes, experience does help. However, how you come and how you tackle an interview sometimes just comes to how you perform on the day. So before we get into it, I just have a bit of a shameless plug, which is that I have brought out the ultimate social work interview and statement guide for newly qualified social workers. If you haven't already, please do make sure that you check this out on my website. If you're a social work student or you're a new practitioner who is trying to conquer, who is trying to apply for your first social work role, then I have created a guide that is the answer to your needs. As well as the videos that I put out, I've also got a very, very simple guide that I've put together that literally walks you through every different stage of that interview. And if I say so myself, I think it's really helpful. I've had a lot of positive feedback about that. And if you're someone who feels that you struggle with your interviews and that you want to have a bit of a consultation, you want to speak with someone who's a hiring manager, you want to know what do's and the don'ts are of tackling that interview, then you can also have a one-to-one consultation with me and we can talk through that together. It really improves your success of acing that interview. So yeah, check that out on my website. This video is going to be about the aftermath of your interview, so seeking feedback, especially if you have not been successful in getting the job. Now, for a lot of us, we don't want to have to face asking someone, why didn't I get the job? However, it's really important that if we haven't been successful with an interview that we've done, that we are seeking feedback. Why? Because it is important to know where we didn't go right. It is important to know what we need to do for next time. It is important to inform, because it will inform our next interview. It will make sure that we come back bigger and stronger than ever. So the first thing that is needed is to actually get that feedback. So it's about going back to your agency, if you're signed up with a social work agency, or if you've applied to the local authority directly. It's about contacting them and saying, I was not successful in that interview. Please, can I receive some feedback from the panel to then inform and help me to understand what areas I was weak in terms of my answers and in terms of my answers to the questions, what areas I was strong in, and potentially any tips that they may have for me as to why I was not successful for that interview. What I would say is asking for feedback is not a weakness. Asking for feedback is not begging. Asking for feedback is not a waste of time. It's to help you grow and develop. So yeah, definitely make sure that you go back and you ask for feedback. As someone who has previously hired and interviewed practitioners for roles, when you're interviewing people, we're taking down notes. You can see we're taking down notes, we're taking down different points, we're noting all the things that you did really well, and we're scoring against it. So there will be a written record of the interview that you did. So you are not putting yourself out or anybody out by asking for that feedback. So once you've received that feedback, what do you need to do with it? You actually need to listen to what is being said. You need to come into that space with an open mind. Don't be defensive, don't be dismissive. Come in with an open mind as to what you may or may not have done well in that interview. It's those unwritten things that perhaps you don't necessarily see within yourself, but other people have picked up on. Was it your appearance? Was it the way that you presented? Was it eye contact? Was it things like how you answered the questions? Was it how you interpreted the questions? So make sure that you're listening to the feedback and you're also jotting it down for next time. So the next step is about strategizing. Make sure that you're now strategizing how you're going to use that feedback. What particular areas did they say that you did better in or that you did strong in? If it's areas that you did well in, try and think back to how you answered that question. Try and think back to try and take in what they're saying about that strength, so that you can try and emulate that for the other questions that you weren't necessarily so strong in. And from the areas that you weren't so great in, okay, what can you take from that? What is it that what was an area that you were lacking? And also come prepared with your own questions for the panel member. Okay, you say that particular question I didn't answer so well in, what would have been a model answer that you would have liked to hear? You can also ask them for that. What is a model answer that you would have liked to hear? Again, jot that down, make sure that you're taking notes, so that when it then comes to your next interview, you are also using those tips, those feedback, those things to then inform your other interview. You've sought that feedback, take it in and then move on. There's no point dwelling too much in that feedback. There's no point in dwelling too much in that you were not successful for this interview. What can I do with all the information that I've gained from the feedback session that I've had with the panel member, and now how can I move on? What can I do so that next time I am bigger and I'm better in my interview? It's something that you need to not do once you get feedback, is to put on your petty boots. And what I mean by that is getting feedback or having someone be critical of you, or how you may perceive it to be critical of you, can sometimes bring out our defense mechanisms, and we then want to be defensive. We then want to try and argue this, argue that. It's not worth it. The panel member has taken time out to meet with you, to have a discussion with you over the phone, taking what's being said. So yeah, don't come in and try and be petty, don't come in and try and be defensive, because it's not going to work. It's not going to change their mind. It's not going to make you feel any better. So yeah, let's not put on our petty boots. Something else with feedback is do not seek feedback. So I have been one of those people who have come out of an interview, I've either felt that I've done really well with it, or I felt not so great with it, and I've not sought feedback. I've literally come out of it, parked it, put it to bed, and not really been that bothered, or not really been that invested in whether or not I was successful or not. And if you're looking about growth, and if you're looking about development, and if you're thinking about why it is that you're not being successful in your interviews, that is one of the number one mistakes that you can make, not seeking that feedback. And for a lot of us, the reason why we don't seek feedback is because of confidence. We're worried about someone being critical of us. We're worried about someone saying something negative about us. If it's been a long line of rejections after rejections after rejections after rejections, then we might not want to hear someone being negative. We might not want to hear someone saying something that you might have heard about 1,000 times over. But what I will say, it's really important that you are getting that feedback, just because you never know what that person is going to say that someone else hasn't said. If you've come prepared with your questions and you're asking them, okay, you're saying that I didn't do well in this area, what would you have liked to have seen? What would have made me successful? That's something that you are now taking control of that narrative. You are now being proactive in making sure that the feedback that you're receiving is constructive. There's no point in receiving feedback if it's not going to be constructive. There's no point in receiving feedback if you can't use it to develop, if you can't use it to move on, if you can't use it to then reframe how it is that you answer those questions in the future. So things that you need to think about, or questions that you need to ask yourself, is what do I need to work on? What do you need to work on to make sure that you are now prepared, you are now fit for the job that you are applying for, to make sure that you are acing that interview? How am I going to get there? What is it that I need to do to make sure that I get there? Is it that I need to go back and get more experience? Is it that I need to practice my interview skills more? Is it that I need to maybe apply for this role on a different day? Is it that I need to change the environment that I'm in so that I'm more prepared mentally and physically to brace that interview? I've been in situations where I've tried to do interviews and I've done it on my lunch break, I've done it before, after work, and I've just not been able to mentally prepare myself for that interview, and it really shows, it really impacts, because it throws me off. So what is it that I need to do? What is it that I need to change so that when I then have that interview again, it is, as I'm successful? So remember, feedback is important. Feedback is critical to making changes. Feedback is critical to learning and growing from areas that you may not have done well in. It was also another reflective opportunity for you to think about, what did I do well in that interview, what did I not do so well, and having that balance of not just focusing on the negative. So because you didn't get the job, that means that I'm a failure, that means that I didn't do well, that means that I'm not fit for this job, that means all these different negative thoughts. Getting feedback can also help to kind of bring you back down and reframe your mind so that you are more positive and you are more encouraged in applying for whatever job it is that you want to apply for.